Welcome everyone to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we are going to explore something that literally applies to every single one of us. We're diving into the ultimate structured blueprint to personal growth and human fulfillment. You know, so often in our modern lives, we find ourselves feeling strangely stuck. Maybe you have felt it? That weird restlessness, even when, on paper at least, we seem to have all our basic needs totally met. Well, today we're going to look at core human needs through the lens of modern psychology and ancient wisdom to understand exactly why that happens. And, much more importantly, we're going to figure out how to unstick ourselves by translating all this fascinating science into a practical roadmap you can actually use in your day-to-day life.
To really kick things off, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to genuinely think about it for a second. Does wealth really equal happiness? Or is true fulfillment found somewhere else entirely? It's a question that's as old as time, right? But modern research actually gives us a surprisingly concrete answer to this. Psychologists often talk about this concept called the hedonic treadmill. It works like this. When you get a big raise or you buy that shiny new car, you experience a huge temporary spike in happiness. But then, you quickly adapt to that new baseline and the joy just kind of fades away. The research actually proves that material gains provide rapidly diminishing returns to our overall happiness once our basic physical needs are met. Basically, once you can reliably pay your rent and buy your groceries without stressing, the happiness curve flattens out dramatically. True fulfillment, as it turns out, extends so far beyond wealth accumulation or professional achievements.
To uncover where that true fulfillment actually lies, here's the roadmap for our ascent today. We'll be walking through 6 core sections. First, we'll look beyond material success. Second, we'll examine surviving, the foundational needs. Third, we step up to thriving, connection and esteem. Fourth, we reach the peak, self-actualization. Fifth, we'll look at modern perspectives and barriers. And finally, we'll wrap the whole thing up with your practical action plan.
So, let's jump right into Section 1, Beyond Material Success. This is where we start moving past those surface-level definitions of success to really see what truly drives us as human beings beneath the surface.
As we start to look closely at what we actually need to be happy, we have to recognize a massive shift in complexity. Think about it. Our physical needs often have very clear-cut external solutions. If you are physically thirsty, you just drink a glass of water. If your stomach growls, you eat something. Boom, problem solved. But as we move upward, fulfilling our psychological desires for meaning and purpose, well, that demands a much deeper level of complex self-awareness. Psychological needs don't loudly growl like an empty stomach does. Instead, a lack of meaning often manifests as subtle, lingering feelings of emptiness, chronic burnout, or just a vague sense of restlessness that you can't quite put your finger on. And that is exactly why profound self-awareness is absolutely mandatory here. The solutions are no longer just external things you can buy or consume. They are deeply, deeply internal.
Okay, let's dive into this structure directly. Many of you might already recognize this incredibly famous concept. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This pyramid serves as our literal blueprint for how human needs progress. It brilliantly illustrates the journey from our most basic, gritty, physical survival requirements all the way at the bottom, up to complex psychological fulfillment at the very top. And honestly, a pyramid is the absolute perfect metaphor here. Think about building a physical house. If the concrete foundation is cracked or sinking into the mud, the beautiful penthouse suite at the top is eventually going to collapse. There's just no way around it. You simply cannot leapfrog to the top of human potential without completely solidifying the base first. Every single level we are going to talk about today builds entirely upon the structural integrity of the previous one.
Let's move right to our next section and see exactly how this builds from the ground up. This is Section 2, Surviving, the Foundational Needs.
Down at the very base of the pyramid, we have Level 1, Physiological Needs. Make no mistake, this is the absolute, non-negotiable foundation of all human functioning. We are talking about diverse nutrients here. And not just empty calories, but the complex fuel that literally supports your higher cognitive functions. We're talking about getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep for adults, which is absolutely essential for emotional regulation and memory consolidation. I mean, think about the last time you were running on, say, 4 hours of sleep. Were you sitting around pondering your ultimate life purpose and seeking spiritual enlightenment? Of course not. You were probably just desperately thinking about where your next cup of coffee was coming from. When these foundational needs go unmet, your body becomes singularly, intensely focused on basic survival, which makes any higher pursuits virtually impossible. You literally cannot focus on personal growth if you are chronically exhausted or malnourished.
And to put into perspective just how foundational and frankly sometimes how fragile this level actually is, consider this really jarring statistic from UNICEF in 2024. 30% of the world still lacks reliable access to safe drinking water. 30%!
For nearly a third of our entire planet, self-actualization is a distant, almost unimaginable luxury because their entire cognitive load and daily energy is spent simply trying to survive the day. It is a stark, sobering reminder of how fundamental this level 1 need remains globally. It really shows us how aggressively addressing these physical needs is the absolute first crucial step to creating the baseline conditions where human thriving even becomes a possibility.
Now, once those physiological needs are dependably met, we get to ascend to level 2, safety and security. What's really interesting here is how modern research strongly highlights the immense power of routine at this stage. Things like predictable daily routines, having stable housing, and maintaining regular sleep schedules, these actually significantly reduce our baseline anxiety. By creating a vital foundation of reliability, these seemingly boring daily routines act as a massive psychological buffer against what is often a very chaotic and uncertain world outside our front doors.
To truly understand security, we really have to break it down into 4 distinct pillars. First, there's physical safety, which is just protecting us from bodily harm and environmental threats. Then there's financial stability, which reduces chronic stress by finally allowing us the breathing room to do long-term planning. Third is health security, providing us confidence in our long-term physical well-being. But the fourth and crucial point here that so often gets overlooked is emotional security. This is the psychological safety that allows for true, authentic expression. Think of a really healthy relationship or a supportive workplace where you don't feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells. When you have genuine emotional security, you can be vulnerable without that paralyzing fear of rejection, humiliation, or sudden retaliation. And having that safety, that is the ultimate bridge to our next level.
As we successfully establish that safety, we can finally shift into a much warmer, more expansive space. Welcome to Section 3, Thriving, Connection and Esteem.
At level 3, we encounter love and belonging. Look, we are inherently social creatures. The absolute key takeaway here is that human connection isn't just a nice psychological desire, it is a strict biological imperative. In fact, neuroscience tells us something wild. Loneliness triggers the exact same pain centers in the human brain as a physical injury. Your brain processes being alone the same way it processes being hit, and there's a very deep evolutionary reason for this. Back in our hunter-gatherer days, being separated from the tribe didn't just mean you were sad, it meant literal death by starvation or predator. So our brains brilliantly evolved to sound a highly painful physical alarm system whenever we become isolated. The real-world impact of this biological need is honestly staggering, acting as a sort of hidden modern epidemic in our society. According to 2023 data from the CDC, chronic loneliness not only increases the risk of premature mortality, heart disease, and stroke, which is bad enough, but it increases the risk of depression and anxiety by a massive 68%. Just let that number sink in for a moment. 68%. Isolation isn't just an inconvenience, it is a profound, literal threat to our overall system. So, how do we actually solve this in today's world? Well, social psychology research points us to 2 really important numbers. The first is Dunbar's number, which is 150. This represents the cognitive limit to the number of stable, meaningful social relationships a human brain can effectively maintain at any one time. Today, it's incredibly easy to have 2,000 friends on Facebook or 5,000 followers on Instagram, but our biological brains literally cannot process that many real connections. It's vital to remember that quality matters infinitely more than quantity. Within that biological limit of 150, research suggests we should fiercely protect and prioritize an optimal core of just 3 to 5 deep, close connections. That tiny, tight-knit group, that is what truly drives our day-to-day emotional well-being.
With a strong, stable foundation of belonging, we naturally reach upward for level 4, esteem needs. This is divided into 2 very distinct categories. First, you have internal esteem, which comes entirely from within. This is your self-respect, your autonomy, and your ability to confidently set healthy boundaries for yourself. Then you have external esteem, which is the recognition, the status, and the appreciation you receive from the outside world. The real trap here in modern life is seeking only external esteem, like endlessly chasing superficial social media likes, without actually building internal competence. What is fantastic, though, is that certain deep work activities can brilliantly satisfy both of these at the exact same time. For instance, think about learning a difficult new language, or finally mastering a musical instrument. Doing that brilliantly satisfies your internal esteem because you're building genuine, hard-earned competence, while naturally earning you authentic external recognition and respect from your peers because of what you've accomplished.
And now we reach the absolute pinnacle of our journey today. Section 4, the peak. Self-actualization.
What a man can be, he must be. This need we may call self-actualization. That profound quote from Abraham Maslow himself captures the absolute essence of this level beautifully. Up until now, everything we've talked about, the lower needs, have been about filling a deficiency. You're fixing a lack of food, a lack of safety, a lack of connection. You are essentially pulling yourself out of a hole. But self-actualization? It's entirely different. It is all about continuous, limitless growth. It is no longer a problem to be solved. It is a vast, beautiful mountain horizon to be chased. It's the intrinsic, deep-seated drive to become everything you are inherently capable of becoming in this life.
So what does a genuinely self-actualized person actually look like in practice? Well, they tend to exhibit profound self-acceptance and high spontaneity. They are intensely problem-centered rather than being ego or self-centered. They have a strong ethical sense, and they frequently enjoy what psychologists call peak experiences. If you haven't heard of these, peak experiences are those incredible moments of intense flow, profound awe, or deep artistic immersion where time just seems to stand completely still. And living this kind of purpose-driven life has highly measurable benefits too. In fact, 2024 OECD research shows that regular volunteers, meaning people dedicating their time and energy to a purpose entirely beyond themselves, report 28% higher life satisfaction scores than non-volunteers. Helping others literally makes your own life demonstrably better.
Now, obviously, Maslow developed this foundational framework decades ago, and our world has certainly evolved quite a bit since then. That brings us to Section 5, Modern Perspectives and Barriers.
We really have to openly acknowledge the new complexities and structural hurdles that exist in our hyper-fast modern environment. One of the absolute biggest complexities today is the paradox of technology. Our digital tools provide us with unprecedented access to global resources, yet they so often create a massive hurdle for authentic engagement. I like to think of a lot of social media as the junk food of human connection. It perfectly mimics social interaction, it tastes good in the moment, but it ultimately leaves us emotionally malnourished. This is exactly why 78% of adults today report feeling lonelier despite being more electronically connected than at any other point in human history. Furthermore, modern psychology introduces a concept that Maslow actually added much later in his life called transcendence. Situated even above self-actualization, transcendence is the profound realization that the peak isn't really about you at all. It's the intense desire to help others self-actualize and to lift up future generations. It's the ultimate boss level of human existence.
But of course, the path upward isn't always perfectly clear. We all face very real roadblocks. There are environmental challenges, like pervasive socioeconomic inequality that keeps people trapped at the bottom. There are interpersonal obstacles, such as navigating toxic relationships or bad work environments. And there are massive mental health barriers, like chronic anxiety or unresolved trauma. But remember this, these are just barriers. They are not dead ends. And we have proven tools to clear the path. Practicing regular mindfulness, for instance, dramatically increases your real-time awareness of what your authentic needs actually are in the moment. Leaning heavily on professional support networks and firmly setting boundaries, like literally turning off your work emails after 6 p.m. to protect your mental health, these are highly effective practical strategies to help overcome these modern hurdles.
Which brings us perfectly to our final section, and undeniably the most important one for you today. Section 6, your practical action plan. I really want to ask you directly, looking at this structure we've just built together, where are your current deficiencies? Let's pivot our explainer right now toward actionable daily maintenance so you can walk away with something real. Here is how you can treat each of these domains as actionable steps starting immediately. For your physical foundation, don't just vague post that you'll sleep more. Actively commit today to establishing a consistent 7 to 9 hour sleep schedule to get your brain out of basic survival mode. For safety and security, take the micro step of automating your savings this week, even just a tiny amount, slowly working toward a 3 to 6 month emergency fund to dramatically reduce your baseline financial anxiety. For connection building, don't spread yourself too thin trying to please everyone. Call just one person from your core group of 3 to 5 close friends and schedule real, screen-free quality time for this weekend. And finally, for personal growth, set some meaningful milestones. Pick one micro-habit or one subject of genuine passionate interest and dedicate just 15 uninterrupted minutes to it tomorrow.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative question. Which specific need requires your attention today to create a truly fulfilling life? I want you to just let that question hang in the air for a moment. Think about it. In fact, before you click away and go back to your day, I challenge you to write down your one targeted need right now. Or even leave it in the comments below to hold yourself publicly accountable. True fulfillment is never an accident. It requires a holistic approach. I highly encourage you to begin with deep self-awareness. Proceed with deliberate intention. And always, always remember that small, consistent steps at the base of your pyramid will inevitably lead to profound, lasting changes at your peak. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I truly hope this framework helps you build the incredibly fulfilling life you absolutely deserve. See you next time.